Hi there, my empathic peeps. I'm here. This is Jen from empathicmastery.com, and I am here with my dear friend Britt Bolnick of Britt Bolnick in Arms Coaching because she just launched her book today. And her book is an amazing book all about how to bend time and how to basically change your life by owning your time. And you can grab a copy of the book for 99 cents right now by heading over to empathicmastery.com/time magic. But we use the fancy schmancy spelling of magic, Magick, not the watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Welcome, Brett. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate this.
I just, your time management skills and I mean, that's just not even the right word for it. Your time magic skills really made a huge, huge difference in my life. And when I first met you and we first started talking about it, like the idea that I could work less, that I could have more space for me, that I could actually delegate responsibility, it just really sounded like, yeah, that works for other people. That sounds like, yeah, 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 right, sure. But the truth is that it does work, and my life is completely different now than it was when I first started working with your tools. And I realized I was doing the math as I was writing. You and I met like pretty much exactly 10 years ago at the sanctuary like big blowout bash. So I was like, wow.
Well, you didn't meet me. I met you.
Yeah, right. Well, but we met and then we met a couple
Yes.
months later. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, we almost met 10 years
We
ago,
almost
almost
met.
exactly. Yeah. So, Britt, tell me about the book.
So it's funny because as I talk to more and more folks, especially women who have gone through the tools, I hear so many folks saying that, it's really changed things for them. It's really changed how they spend their time, how they view their time, all these pieces. And one of the things that it makes me reflect on is that the pieces of work and the actions in this book aren't tools that I found to begin living a different way. They were the only way that I could live. And so it's not like I had as much of a before. I mean, I did have a before and after, but it's like this book was created honestly just to help me navigate staying alive as a single mother with solo custody of a toddler, bailing myself out of financial destitution, and trying to find a way to enact my calling in the world. So it's wonderful to hear how many people use it in so many different ways. But this was non-negotiable. The
Mm-hmm.
pieces that I teach in this book, this was how I stayed alive. And this was the system and the series of tools and systems and, magical practices that allowed me to go from not to be a drama queen, but really feeling like I couldn't breathe
Mm-hmm.
to where I am now, which because you're my boo, is like some of what's happening now I couldn't have even dreamed of. Like it's just so good. And this book is the magical recipe for many of the pieces that are present today happening.
Yeah. Well, in knowing you back, like around the time that you were really carving this out and that you were really starting it, something you didn't mention is that not only did you have a toddler, but you had a clingy toddler who pretty much insisted on being in your arms
Oh my
24/7.
gosh. Yeah.
And so it was like, it wasn't just like you had a kid and you had a spouse and you had, parents and people who would help you. You had a kid who wanted nobody but you. And so
Yeah.
you're trying to look at this and build a business with a baby, a crying, fussy, whiny baby
On
in
my
your
body.
arms. Yeah.
Yeah. You used
Yeah.
to point out that she was one of the only children that you would ever let come for like a 6 hour tattoo sitting and curl up in the corner with a laptop because
Right.
she wouldn't be apart from me. And she was so used to going so many places with me that she was very quiet and well behaved when
Oh,
she
she
was.
was a
But
dream.
yeah,
She never
yeah,
she never did some of the things that some of the other children tried to do.
that's true in many
Yeah.
regards.
I mean,
But
she
yeah, I
really
mean,
is exceptional.
it was just the two of us, and we were tied at the hip. And that was part of the impetus really for the calling part of the book. I had to find something that I loved and that I could balance my time while doing, so that I could be there as much as she needed me, because I really felt like what she was going through, first of all, she came by it honestly. Like, she had a really traumatic first year or two, and I knew that she would outgrow it. I knew I just had to give her patience. So I wanted to create a life where she could hang off my body until she felt comfortable letting go. And that meant that I didn't want to put her in daycare. No judgment at all for people for whom that's the best choice. It would have been absolutely traumatizing for her to be taken away from me eight to 10 hours a day. It just wouldn't have
Absolutely.
worked. So, the magic of bending time tools really allowed me, and this is one of the things that I hear women saying, which I love, it's allowed us to create an existence that is exactly of our design. And mine included letting the damn kid hang for me until she was ready to let go.
I'm just nodding my head. And, there are so many different places we could go with this. One thing that I wanted to comment about was something that I've heard you say a number of times, which is that you had no plan B.
Mm-hmm.
That it was sort of like this was a make it or break it thing. And you really, like, you had to make this work.
Yeah.
And I just really, I think sometimes I'm just floored where I think, like, oh my God, you built your business from 3 to 4 hours a week, not 3 to 4 hours a day, 3 to 4 hours a
Yeah.
week is where you
Yeah.
started with this. And I think that for some people, that's almost inconceivable. Like, how in God's name could you possibly build a business where you have 3 to 4 hours of time available?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's sort of one of those examples of, like, this wasn't a luxury, like, how do I live a laptop lifestyle and travel and still have a business? This was a holy shit, I have to get out of where I am right now. And there are only 3 to 4 hours a week. So how do I create this? And actually, thinking back, I was just thinking about this for a talk I did the other night. In Arms has never been full time. I've never worked 40 hours a week in Arms. And 5 years ago when we started Pity Posse, I got it down to mostly Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's mostly 3 days a week with a little overflow when I choose. But back in those days, there were only 3 to 4 hours a week. And that was one of the other things that was so important about the bending time tools, was that in order to make a business happen in 3 to 4 hours a week, I had to be so crystal clear about what was important to do. I really had to have the focus. So when I had those 3 to 4 hours a week, I was like, my nose was to the grindstone. I knew what I was working on. I had a fairly decent idea that it would be an effective path. It wasn't spaghetti throwing spaghetti at the wall time. I had to know what was going to work, and I had to sit with my nose down and really make it work. And that was that focus, which is such a an element of magic, right? Like, creating focus, really teaching yourself to, like, zero in and then removing any blocks and obstacles and resistance that you have to that focus. That was really crucial and has been all along.
Right, right. Well, and you just said the $1 million, like, you just dropped like a major nugget right there in saying, it's like the formula is, in some ways, it's a three-part formula. You get the focus and you get the plan of what it is. Then you hit the wall and you discover all the resistance and the roadblocks and the things
Yeah.
that are keeping you from being able to do it. Then you got to clear it and address
Yeah.
it, because otherwise you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And then actually it's a four-step system, and then you go forward and you implement again.
Yeah.
And it's so, and I really see the way that you talk about time in a way kind of really supports that, like, the clearing of energy, the allowing things to flow as a priority. And I think
Hmm.
back to, the very first time that you led me through the sacred structure. And one of the things that we did was we looked at where I was spending my time. And
Hmm.
because you talk about what the place where you're using your time, like, what are you actually using your time for versus what do you
Yeah.
want to be using your time for? And it was really striking immediately how many things were on my I have to do these things lists that were extraneous, that were not based on what I actually wanted, that were not necessarily using my time. And it was really amazing how when I started looking at what I cared about, what my priorities were, what really mattered to me, in some ways the resistance lifted. Because
Mhm.
when I was focusing on all the, excuse my language, crap that really didn't need, like, that was making me spin my wheels and just keeping me like running around like in a hamster wheel, I was having a lot more issues with procrastination. I was having a lot more issues with resistance. I was having a lot more issues with hitting up roadblocks because I wasn't following my heart's desire and I wasn't
Yeah.
happy. And as
Yeah.
I started to create more and more room for joy and happiness, what amazingly happened was that I was able to that a lot of like the issues kind of lift. So it's kind of this weird magical thing. Like you create more room for your joy,
Yeah.
and everything else kind of has this weird way of working out better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a major axiom of magic, right? What you pay attention to grows, like what you focus on grows. And when you learn to master your focus, then you can really choose what it is that's growing. So the more you choose joy, like it's just, I mean, it's a science thing at this point. It's not even just magic. It's crossed over into science. We know this now.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense. And that's, I think that's one of the neat ways where, it really does feel like you're bending time because my mother actually said this in the review of my book. Almost every week that I talked to her, almost every time that I talked to her, at least once a week, she said, "Good God, girl, I don't know how you do it." And that always puts me in a place where I think, am I exhausted? Like, do I sound crazy? And I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always have to be like, well, I don't know. It doesn't feel like, I mean, I see everything I'm doing, but I don't feel harried. I
Right.
don't feel stressed.
Right.
I don't feel like every single thing that I do in my day, whether it's saving a pit bull or mentoring a woman or making the kid avocado toast or buying flowers and shopping for good food, like every single thing that I do all day long, I absolutely love. And that's where the time starts to bend because it's all joyful.
Yes. Yes. Well, and what this reminds me of is when I first opened up Sanctuary, when I first sort of got the call and had the feeling, like knew that it was time to pivot my entire life and do something completely different, one of the things that blew my mind was how effortlessly and easily success came to me because I
Yeah.
was so in joy. I was
Yeah.
not in a state of harried stress. I was not, like, I mean, it was hard work. I will not, I
Yeah.
mean, setting up a brick and mortar business and building a business from scratch is hard work. But when you're doing something that you are completely aligned with and you're doing something that brings you joy, there's this wild part of the equation where stuff gets easier.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, and time has this wild way of doing this magical thing where it kind of speeds up and slows down, and it's like you can be so much more efficient because you're focused and you're just in your bliss. And I have
Yes.
absolutely had that experience where when I'm on track and I'm aligned and I'm doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, life has a way of working out in a way that when I'm not there, it tends to get all bunched up and
Yeah.
sticky, and and I'm just like, and I'm doubting and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is so cool because then when things feel like what you just mentioned, it's like this check engine light that something is off or it wouldn't feel that way, right?
Right.
I
Right.
know that when something feels hard or I'm not happy or I feel like I'm like, or if I feel like I'm working and pushing, something has gone off course a little bit,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Moxie's about to start barking because
Oh,
Sully's about to come
okay.
in. But
Hey, Moxie.
anyone who's ever listened to me before knows that the dogs are going
Yes.
to bark.
Yes. Moxie is quite the talker. Yeah. Well, and your check engine light. If anybody, many people who follow me here know that I talk about your check engine light on a regular basis, and so I think that that's another piece of the of sort of the magic of bending time is when things aren't flowing smoothly, that is an indication that we've got a check engine light. Do you want to unpack
Yeah.
that a little bit more and tell us about, like, and maybe actually talk about your personal experience? What's your check engine light?
Yeah. So, one of the other reasons that for some reason I've forgotten all through this launch to talk about this, but one of the other reasons that it became so important for me to understand how to utilize my time best so that it felt like not as hard work was that I have an immune disorder and I've had it since I was 19 and I kind of forget about it from time to time. But it means that my check engine lights are way more trigger sensitive than some people's. And it means that if I get stressed, I get sick. If I don't eat well, if I don't sleep 8 or more hours a night, I get sick.
And so
So
your
one
check
of
engine light is that you get sick.
my check engine light is that I start to not feel well. I start to
Mm-hmm.
feel kind of fluey, which,
Mm-hmm.
as you can imagine, in the last year and a half has been like
Really
panic
scary.
inducing.
Yeah.
Yeah, really and scary. But I do know that when I start, like I get a little bit of a sore throat, I get a little bit headachy. And what that means is it's essentially like the gas light going on in your vehicle. It means you're running on fumes, stop, drop, and sleep. And so part of what I've needed to do throughout these last 15 years is make sure that my schedule and my lifestyle allows that if I don't feel well, my calendar gets cleared. I stop working, I get into bed with Netflix, and I go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've really learned to to see those check engine lights. And some of them are physical symptoms. Some of them are like, I'm really irritable when I'm tired, or, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Someone's knocking at the door, Jen.
Okay,
This
why
is
don't
so
you go
weird.
deal with what you
Hang
go
on one
deal
sec.
with that, and I am just going to make a plug. So, guys,
Okay.
I have a hard copy of the book right here, which I am delighted to show you guys. Look at this. There's a lovely picture of Britt on the back. Now, right now, the hard copy has not yet been released. And what is available right now is the Kindle copy, but you can grab a copy of the Kindle version of this book, which is worth every single penny and then some, like 10 times over. Oh my God, look at that. So just head on over to empathicmastery.com/time magic. Like I said, the fancy schmancy spelling of magic, MAGICK, and you can grab a copy of this amazing book for 99, like not even clams. We're talking like, I don't know, 99 pence, like 99 wee pennies. So not even a dollar, not even like, I mean, you could probably buy a small cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee for the price of this
Maybe.
book. Maybe, depending on where you live. Maybe you could, I mean, a slice of pizza, I don't even know anymore what you could get for 99 cents. And
This book.
this book for let's move it over so you guys can all see it. This book for 99 cents with tools that are proven, that have been working for me, for Britt, for so many of the other women who are in her tribe. So many of us have been able to take these tools and use them to really go after and create the life we want to live. And you reminded me of, like, there was the period of time where back in 2013 where we were already working together, where I came to a grinding halt because I got Lyme induced pneumonia.
Yeah.
And I was knocked flat. In hindsight, I can absolutely see that that was a massive life check engine light, and it was really
Yeah.
the beginning of a major pivot in my life, where I went from breakneck speed, being booked out 6 to 8 months in advance, being my calendar being so stuffed to the gills that that getting sick was like a nightmare for me.
Yeah.
And I remember this point where, we would check in and I would just say, all I can do is rest. All I can do is surrender. All I can do is just be patient and wait and trust that everything will find its way through. And the thing that was amazing about that was that that was a point where things became ironically even more effortless, because what I discovered was I did not lose money. I did not like have like this major setback as a result of the fact that I had to suddenly really seriously up my self-care, and that I needed to be like my priorities just got really dialed down.
Yeah.
Actually, what happened was things really started to have a chance to fall into place in a way that they had
Hmm.
not before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important to see. And what you bring up is so important because it's like when you keep running around at breakneck speed, it's not sustainable. And what usually happens is we don't stop until something stops us. And what I've learned from having an immune disorder is that I really want to be the one to say when I'm going to lie down. And if I
Mm-hmm.
don't do it, then my body will decide and my body will knock my feet out from under me. But all of these pieces, every woman that works with sacred structure and bending time does it around her priorities and her, the things that are really important to her and her needs and her dreams. And I think that the fact that women are learning through using this, that you don't have to choose to put yourself first or build a thriving business. You can actually have both. You can actually work less and have more of an impact. You can work less and make more money. You can, have a hugely successful, thriving business and still have 3 or 4 days a week off. And that's one of the things that's the most beautiful to me, because women come to me and they're afraid to be successful because of what it's gonna cost them.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
price, I have heard so many women, and I don't necessarily hear men say this, but the thing I hear so many women say is that their fear is if they become successful, they'll have less time for their family, they'll have
Yeah.
less time for self care, and that they will have to be focusing on business 24/7. And especially if they're moms, the fear that they're going to, they're just not going to be able to be there for their kids.
Yeah.
And what is just so amazing is that everything that you teach in these tools, there's the thumb, in these tools in the book, really are almost like the antidote to this hectic, frenzied, stressed out, just push, 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 push kind of life
Yeah.
that so many of us equate with success.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
It's the anti-hustle.
it is the anti-hustle. It really is the
Hmm.
anti-hustle. And I just realized, it was 11 years ago that we first connected. Actually, it was 11 years ago,
Wow.
because it was 2010, not 2011. So it was
Isn't
11
that
years ago that
crazy? Oh my
you
goodness.
and I first connected. And what an amazing journey. And I completely agree with you. If somebody told me 11 years ago what my life would be looking like 11 years later, I would have been absolutely like, no, sir. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, not possible.
Yeah. How the hell is that going to happen?
How the hell is that going to
Yeah.
happen? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, I talk a lot about the idea of we can set boundaries in healthy ways or unhealthy ways, and in a lot of ways you are
Yes.
saying the same thing, that it's sort of like,
Mhm.
we can use our health or our circumstances. Like if you're somebody who, I went through a period where my check engine light was blocking my keys in my car or running out of gas, like that was my sign. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
yep, you really hit your wall. But it's sort of like we can use those little indicators that we need to really change and course correct. Or if we don't, our bodies and our circumstances will set those boundaries. And what I
Yeah.
love about your structure and your system is that the sacred structure system and and bending time is all about boundaries and priorities for what really matters to us, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're having a Lyme flare up, or we are getting
Yeah.
into a car accident, or we're locking ourselves out of our car all the time, or we're creating drama in some situation.
O- or we are letting our calling fall by the wayside because of our fear of what it's going to cost us, which is what many women choose to make that's how many women deal with that. They say, well, I can't build a business, or, now is just not the right time. And, the women that I work with as well, because they're, women that are in community with you. Our world needs these women doing
Mm-hmm.
the things that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
These are the magicians and the healers and the teachers and the change makers and the activists. And I don't want them giving up their calling, their visions, their dreams, because they think they have to make a choice.
Right.
And that was like the biggest motivation for writing this book, because it's not everyone is in a place to work with a business coach, and I totally get that, and it's not everyone's style, and I'm not the business coach for everyone, but this book everyone could potentially have. It's so easy. And that just, if as many women as buy this book give up the notion that they have to choose, that they have to sacrifice, that success is going to cost them, gosh, gee, I mean,
Well, and I also
that would
want to
be
make a
amazing.
plug for the book Beyond Business. The
Mm-hmm.
subtitle on the book is Time Management for Freedom-Seeking Entrepreneurial Women and Organizational Skeptics. And
Yeah.
I mean, that organizational skeptics is something we could probably have a really interesting piece of conversation about too. Like,
Yes.
what does that mean? But
Yes.
I also want to say that these tools apply for any human being who wants to pursue a life they love. It doesn't have to be creating a successful business that makes money. It could be following your dream, your passion. It could be that you've dreamed of painting your entire life. It could be that you dreamed about writing a book. It could be that you just want to spend time like in your garden. It could
Yeah.
be that you want to sail across the world. There are any number of ways that this book applies to your heart's desire, whether it is a money making venture or not. So I just want to say that while this book is written around the idea of sacred business is really the business of honoring our heart's desire. And
Yeah.
sometimes that means making money, sometimes that means lying in bed watching Netflix and just
Yeah.
chilling out.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
raising kids, or
raising
as you
kids.
said, making art, or being present in your community. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just a book for business owners, for sure.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Well, and Pity Posse, which is an entirely volunteer organization, and certainly when it first started, it was a labor completely of love.
Yeah.
And it's not like that was your bread and butter, but
Yeah.
you were able to use all of the tools that you write about in this book
Yeah.
to create a rescue organization that is saving 100 pit bulls and pit bull mixes every single year, which
Yeah,
is
yeah, we're
absolutely
yeah, we're
amazing.
almost over that. And that's a great example, because, for 40 something years of my life, my dream was to have a dog rescue, and I literally didn't do it because the role models for rescue that I have known all my life, I've been in dog rescue for well over 20 years, they were all burnt out, substance abusing, ill, financially destitute, had no relationships left. Their partners had left. Their kids hated them. They were losing their homes. That was the model of dog rescue that I grew up seeing. And I kept thinking, I need to do this work. This work is part of my calling, but there's no good time to become financially, like, this is not a sacrifice I want to make. And it was only when it occurred to me that if I had built a business doing it my own way with my own rules, well, hell, I could apply the same rules and principles to dog rescue, and I could start a different kind of rescue. And that's when I
Absolutely.
realized that I could start Pity Posse. But, I could have done it a long time ago. I just was so afraid of what it would cost me. It was a perfect example of this. And, Pity Posse is now becoming not just an organization that saves dogs, but a thought leader in the rescue world for rescuing in a different model, for rescuing
Mm-hmm.
with an
Mm-hmm.
oxygen mask on and not giving every last drop of blood, to be in rescue.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, this is a whole other conversation. Like, you and I could do an entire Facebook Live about, about the vulnerabilities of rescue, about
Yeah.
how so many people who go into rescue are highly sensitive and empathic. And I
Yes.
really see the dysfunction of rescue is an absolute manifestation of the way we treat animals in our culture. And
Hmm.
that the people who go into rescue are looking at a gaping sinkhole of need. And
Horrible.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's absolutely horrible. And it's very understandable why people have responded in the way they do from that place of sort of urgent desperation a lot of the time
Hmm.
and end up burnt out and broke. But it's also a thing where it's like, if we want to actually get out of the trauma and get out of the mess that we are in right now as a species, we have to do something differently. And putting the oxygen
Yeah.
mask on first is part of it.
Yeah.
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 It's so true. I mean, I understand why rescue workers rescue that way, but what they can't see is that their life as a rescue worker is so finite, and many of them just give up and burn out, and then they can't help anymore. And we've,
Right.
we've
Right.
started Pity Posse with every member having their oxygen mask on all the time. And that's really important to me for my team and for me.
So, as we're talking about this, I keep on thinking about the pushback or the yeah, but, sort of like that whole thing of like, I mean, here we are, let's just own it. We're both white women.
Hmm.
We're both
Hmm.
white women. We're sitting here, we're having this conversation, and we're talking about creating a life of our dreams. And I know in my experience, coming from a really interesting family of one side was like dirt poor Irish Catholic fishermen, working class, and the other side was like coming from sort of intellectual, like professionals from the deep south. That I know that there's all these, but especially from the hardworking side of the family, that there's all of these rules, these myths about no pain, no gain, like and sort of that sort of thing of like, well, you had a leg up, or you had an opportunity, or you had something to be able to do this, kind of like. So I would love to, I don't know if I'm articulating that pushback, but kind of like, that's nice for you to say, but like, I've got priorities, I've got needs, you know like
Sure.
like how. And especially as somebody who was, I mean, you were working in a bar 6 to 7 nights a week. I mean, you were living Coyote Ugly. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you were dancing on the bar, but you were,
I was
but
not dancing on
you're
the
not
bar.
dancing
That
on the
would have
bar, but it's
that
pretty
would have been
darn
good
close
for
to
no
Coyote
one.
Ugly. But and it's like, by
Yeah.
day you're the mother of a clingy toddler, and by night you're like bartending, and
Yeah.
6 to 7 nights a week you lost
Yeah.
your house to foreclosure, which I can
Yep.
only imagine how heartbreaking that was, because I'm sure
Yeah.
you had poured everything you had into that house, and to
Yep.
lose that, I mean, it's like a divorce. It's
Yeah. Well, yes, and I lost it as I was getting
getting a
divorced. Yeah. I
divorce,
mean,
right?
I think that, it's definitely important to acknowledge that my leg up was that I have white skin, and
Mm-hmm.
that definitely is a leg up in this world. However, one of the things that I like about this book, when I was reading back when I was growing my business in the very, very beginning, and I was trying to cultivate a different mindset from the mindset that the literal experience of financial destitution had given me. It wasn't just that I believed I was poor, it was that I couldn't buy food. It
Yeah.
was that I lost my home. Like, I was literally poor.
Yeah.
And I was reading a bunch of mindset books, and they would all sound good for a chapter or two, until I got to the part where the person who was talking about how they really know what it's like to be broke because they were $60,000 in credit card debt because they were living in their mother's Fifth Avenue penthouse for
I
free,
know exactly
and
what you're
spent a
talking about.
year
Yeah.
partying and ran up like close to $100,000 in consumer credit card debt. And I was like, wait a minute. Your scarcity issues and my scarcity issues are not the same.
Completely
I
different.
can't buy food for my kid,
Right.
and
Right.
there's no family member helping me out. Like, my family is freaking amazing, but there's no financial support for my
Right.
family.
Right. There was no
And
safety
so
net for you.
there was no safety net. I mean, the safety net that I had, and again, this was privilege, was that when I lost my home, instead of becoming homeless, I moved back into my childhood bedroom with my daughter. so that my mother could help take care of her at night because I couldn't work without my mother's help. But paid half the rent. There was no free ride, but I did have help with childcare,
Yeah.
and I had a place to go so I didn't become homeless. But, when I started reading about ways to change the way that I was thinking, every time I read a book by someone who was like, I know what financial scarcity is. I know that I need to, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what?
Well,
And so
no,
it really became
if you've
important.
never had to decide between eating and paying a bill,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like, then I don't think that like somebody who says, I know what it's like to be broke, but has never had to make the decision between food and another
Yeah.
and another equal priority, like keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I mean, hope maybe they can empathize, but then you get something where
Yeah.
somebody starts writing and it's just completely tone deaf, because it's
Yeah.
clear that, like, if they see $60,000 of debt because they basically snorted all of it up their nose,
Yeah.
that's a very different reality than what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
really wanted to, I really wanted to draw that out because
Mm-hmm.
you are an example of it being possible. You are
Yeah.
an example of somebody who really was up against it.
Yeah.
And yes, you had you had a childhood bedroom to go home to, which is an amazing thing, and a
Mm-hmm.
mom who could help you with childcare. Those are two real
Yeah.
clear blessings. But you were
Yep.
also, you'd lost your home, you were working 6 to 7 nights a week, you were on food stamps, and
Yep.
you were in that place where it was like, what the hell am I gonna do?
Yeah. And sick. And I was sick
And you were
all the
sick.
time
Yeah.
because I wasn't, I've said this, I think I say this in the book, but I got off work at 11 or midnight. And the kiddo, for the first 2 to 3 years of her life, she woke up at 4 a.m. So I got a maximum of 4 hours of sleep a night, which is less than half of what the limit is that I need to function. So I was sick all the time. And I mean, did I have some privilege? Absolutely. There were privilege pieces in there, but I very well could have gotten to a place with my health where it would not have been possible to turn around if I had not been able to change this very, very quickly so that I could get my oxygen mask on. It was literally not sustainable. And I would not have been able to live through it much longer with my health the way it was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are coming around we've been talking for 37 minutes,
Just
amazingly.
goes like that.
I know it does. It really does. And so I was just thinking, I'm just going to make a plug again. You guys, you can get a copy of the book by going over to empathicmastery.com/time magic. That's a link. It's a pretty link that will take you right over to Amazon. There's also, it's in the description. So you can even click on the link in the description here on Facebook. And it's 99 cents. It's a no-brainer. I mean, unless
Until
you
mid
really are like trying to decide between macaroni and cheese and, or ramen noodles and like keeping the lights on, which, yep, that real, I that is a struggle, and it is a real,
Mhm.
the struggle is real. I get that, but for many of us, 99 cents is a no-brainer. Go buy the book. Seriously, people, go buy the book. It has tools in it that are life changing. And I can say that as somebody who went from a calendar that was booked out with no room. Like, I had no breathing room whatsoever. I was booking
Yeah.
6 to 8 months out in advance. And so if I needed to take a day off to go see a doctor, or if I, God forbid, got sick and needed to sleep for a couple days, it meant juggling an entire schedule and pushing things out where people that I had been waiting for 6 months suddenly had to wait another at least couple months. It was a nightmare, especially for an empath
Yeah.
with guilt issues. I mean, talk about
Yeah.
codependency. Like, that fucking sucked. Um, And that's where I started, with just no wiggle room and really just pushing myself to the end limit. I was an overworked giver, is what one of my old business coaches would call it, where I just, I
Hmm.
had more work than I knew what to do with, but I also was burning out because of all of the work. And, you and I created a plan. We started to create a structure. I started to actually get help. I started to carve away time so that there was like buffer spaces. So if I did have
Yes.
to get sick, or if I did get sick or needed time off, that I could slide somebody into a place so that it wasn't
Yes.
this nightmare. And over time, I went from working 5 days, I went from working 5 days a week to working 4 days a week to eventually working 3 days a week. And amazingly, just, things kept flowing and getting better and better
Yeah.
and better. So, Britt, before, I imagine you got other places to run, and I don't know if you could hear the little monsters at the door
Is
that
it
were,
dinner
yeah,
time?
yeah. Actually, it's
They're
not
like,
even dinner time.
Mama,
They're just like, Mom, you are not letting us in this room.
you
But the
close the
reason I'm
door,
not
Mama.
is because we're in a stage right now where we're training, we're at the squirt bottle. I was like, I'm not going to try to interview Britt with a squirt bottle in my hand going, get down, because the kittens are jumping on everything right now. But now they're like,
Oh.
Mom, you left me. So anyway, before I go tend to the kittens and you go on with the rest of this amazing launch day, how about, do you have a tool? Do you have a place for people who are brand new to these concepts? Do you have
Yeah.
something, a tool to start us with?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give two. And the first one is another basic premise of magic, which is to find your goal. Find your goal, find the thing that you want, make it concrete, make it clear, because you can only know what the path is to that goal once you have the goal. If you start trying to build without understanding what the destination is, you're kind of just scattershot all over the place. So find the thing that you want, and then look at how much time you're spending in pursuit of that. And on the other side, and you actually mentioned this earlier, on the other side, spend a week and track your time and see where it really goes. I had a woman who she was a client a long time ago, and she kept coming to me and saying, I have all these blocks of time, and yet my work still isn't getting done. And I have these time blocks for work, and it's not working. And what you told me to do isn't working because I'm not doing stuff and it's not effective. And I said, show me what you're doing. And she showed me, and I said, yeah, that's more than enough time to do what you said you wanted to do. And she said, well, it's just not happening. And I said, I want you to log your time for a week. Let's see what's actually happening here. I know what you think is happening with your time. And it turned out that she was an avid tea drinker. And in her 2-hour blocks of time to work, she was getting up to brew a pot of tea at least twice. And that meant that she'd get up, she'd go in the kitchen, the phone would ring, she'd unload the dishwasher, the pot would be boiling. 15 minutes later, she'd come back, she'd be distracted, she'd check her email. So that was happening in every work period. And she hadn't
Wow.
really been conscious of it because she was like, well, yeah, I get up to make tea, but it's just like a minute. She hadn't been conscious of how much time it was losing to get up and make a pot of tea once or twice a work period. So it was so revolutionary to her. And it also helped her to see that she wasn't screwing it up. There was nothing wrong with her. She simply wasn't aware of where her focus was going.
Right,
And once we
right.
realized that, she would sit down to that work period with a pot of tea and that cool thing that you put over it to keep it
Yeah,
warm.
the tea
And then
cozy.
she'd, yes,
Yes.
and then she'd focus. And she just started immediately getting so much more done because she had her focal point. So even if you think you know where your time is going, just for fun, track it for a
Track your
week.
time. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. So those are
Oh,
the two really quick setup takeaways or practices that you can start implementing immediately. And those are often the two that we start with when I work with women in real time on this.
awesome. I'll throw in a third one, which is that when you set a goal and you set aside time to do it, and then you find yourself continuing to not do the thing that you said you want to do, then it's about the roadblocks, then it's about the resistance, and then it's about looking at, okay, so what's really getting in my way of going after my goal. And I think sometimes it's that we don't actually want what we think we say we want, and that we
Yeah.
need to own that part of us and either address it and clear it so we can own the part that does want it, or let the thing go. But and that's where tapping comes in
Yes.
and really makes a
Yes.
huge
So
difference.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So Britt, do you have any other kinds of things that you want to, like, that you, that it just feels really important to say before we sign off for this?
I really welcome folks to get in touch. I really want to hear one of the only thing that I don't like about the book is that anyone can buy it with no connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to connect with folks who are reading it and using it. I want to hear if it's working. I want to hear if you're stuck reading it and something isn't working. I want to hear if you have questions. Like, I'd really like to open the line back up because it's such an anonymous way to get something that's really sacred and personal to me out in the world. And I feel like it's like this open phone line. So I'd like to encourage folks to drop me a line or find me on Facebook and say, I'm reading the book and this is what's working. I'm reading the book and this is what's not working, or this is the question I have. I really do want to talk with folks about this who are reading it and using it and applying it. So I really encourage folks to reach out and get in touch.
And one of the things you mentioned in one of your emails that just came out the other day, and also even in, in some of the promotional pieces about for the book, is your community, which is
Mhm.
also a really amazing Facebook group of badass business women. And that is certainly a place where anybody who's reading this book and is looking for support and really wants to make that connection to you and to some of the rest of us too, who've been doing this work and working with the time, the bending time for a good while now.
Yeah.
That is a place where you can where that is a place where you can find a lot of us, and you can really connect to Britt. And
Yeah.
so,
And that's called Sacred Biz Rebels. It's
Sacred
on
Biz
Facebook.
Rebels. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And if you are subscribed to my newsletter, I included the link for Sacred Biz Rebels in today's email. So you can check that
Thank
out and
you.
jump over and join us. Britt, it has been, I'm so proud. First off, I just want to say I am so proud of you. I know firsthand what is involved both in writing a book and launching a book.
Mhm.
And it is not for the weak of heart.
No.
It is a big, big thing. And I am
Yeah.
so excited for you. I'm so proud of you. This is a tool that the world needs. And as you said, the thing is that there are so many people who are hiding their light under a bushel, or who are choosing not to do what they're here on the planet to do, because they're afraid that they will lose something else, that it will be a sacrifice, that it will be at the
Yeah.
price of other things that are dear. And what your message that I think is so crucial right now and so incredibly important is, it does not have to be that way. That if anything, everything can get better by pursuing this, and by
Yeah.
going after our joy, and by owning our time and bending our time. So,
Yeah.
and I'm just so incredibly grateful that I was sick and tired and sick of being sick and tired enough of being sick and tired, that I was willing to stop
Yeah.
trying to be the control freak Capricorn that, is just wired into my chart. Capricorn Sun, Virgo rising, like, if you want like, look up in the dictionary, sort of that old saying, if you want something done, done right, you better do it yourself. Like, there's definitely, like, at least the Capricorn glyph, if not a picture of me in there next to that. you
True
know
story.
it's just, and so it's like being willing to experiment with this, being willing to try it. It really is life changing. So, you guys, no brainer. Seriously, no brainer. Go over to empathicmastery.com/time magic, MAGICK, and go buy a copy of this ebook for 99 cents, because it is worth every single penny and then some, and it will open the doors to a lot of new possibilities for you.
Mm. Jen,
Yeah.
thank you so much for hosting me. I love you so much and I appreciate your support so, so, so much.
I love you right back, my dear, and it has been such a pleasure. And I am so glad to be able to just like share this amazing, amazing tool and gift with the world. And you guys, the other thing about this book is that it's manageable. We're not talking a dictionary here. And it's got just
Yes.
it's really, the format is beautiful. It's written in a way that breaks it up into manageable chunks because I mean, when you're a mama and you've only got 3 to 4 hours a week, you understand how to break shit down. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the other thing that's just so awesome about this book is that it's broken down into bite-sized pieces. It's manageable, it's doable. It's just worth so much more than 99 cents. So you guys go down to, hit the link that is in the description below. Go buy a copy of the book, and then come join us in Sacred Rebels, and
Yes.
let us know how it's working for you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in.
Yes, thank you guys. So good to have everybody here. We can't wait to get a chance to look at comments and see what you had to say. Mwah. Okay, I'm gonna finish this.